It's another exciting and informative time on Amagate Radio Communications. The program is Optimizing Opportunities in the Ethiopian Banking Sector, and my name is Abiodun Abari. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining me. We continue to furnish you with top-notch analysis and projections necessary to keep you ahead of competition and aid you ride the wave of the dynamics presented. Okay, important to know that all of our projections and forecasts, as regards the current happenings in the geopolitical terrain have been spot on, and so we do pride ourselves as being able to insulate our clients, from the risks associated with surprises and shocks, helping them get sufficiently prepared to deal with curveballs, variations, nuances and qualifications, and ultimately achieving their organizational targets. Just like the cultural shift we're experiencing, which will go right to the World Cup, to be co-hosted by Canada and Mexico in 2026. Of course, Canada is still liberal, and although the elections were actually a close shave, and it's the belief that Trump's advocacy for Canada to become the first state actually, galvanized Canadians along nationalistic lines, and they just went against the Conservative Party's candidate, even though the candidate was actually leading, greatly on the polls, and he was largely expected to come through as prime minister, as elected prime minister, but those sentiments actually reversed the trend, and there you have the liberals still having power in Canada. Okay, so this is where you understand that the Summer Olympics too, the Los Angeles 2028 too, despite California's governor Gavin Newsom on his podcasts with conservative leaning Charlie Kirk talking about the unfairness of having biological male participating in female sports. As part of that is to have controversy recently with biological male actually still in the spotlight in the female game. So the bottom line is that at Amagate we are ambidextrous enough to ensure consistent reliability. Yes, we'll continue to look at ways to optimize opportunities in the Ethiopian banking sector, with the banking sector reform, the game changer, the banking proclamation by the National Bank of Ethiopia, and also talking about the larger reform in the homegrown economic reform agenda of the Ethiopian government, which of course has a financial inclusion at the very heart, as a means to ensure inclusive growth and economic development. All right. I'm talking about a national financial inclusion strategy, and looking at opportunities being thrown up as a result of the drive towards attaining financial inclusion. In fact, the government has a target to attain 70% financial inclusion in 2025. Yes, by the end of 2025. We talk about significant regulatory and financial infrastructure, talking of improvements to attain enhanced financial inclusion. Okay, so we will talk about Ethiopia still ranking low when compared to its neighbors or countries in the sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, talking of financial inclusion. Okay, even though it has significantly increased its banking population, and when you look at factors that account for that, gender disparities, major factor which we actually really talked about last around. Okay, I'm talking about the increase in disparity. All right. The disparity was 10 percentage points in 2016, and in 2022 you're having about 21 percentage points. And that widening gap causes concern, relevant quarters, and very important to investigate, look at the factors that actually account for the widening lacuna. Important to understand the socioeconomic, cultural, and structural factors which account for that widening the gender gap. Okay, looking at how women, especially poor, rural, old women who have the lowest rung of the financial inclusion ladder, they have less access to education, and they participate less in the economy, and a host of them are self-serving domestic people. Okay, and look at the employment gap too. You have more men in employment than women, and of course you look at the access to economic and digital resources and tools. All right, because those are things that actually enhance financial inclusion and the level of financial literacy. Okay, so those are factors that we understand account for the widening gap, in the gender disparity in terms of financial inclusion. Yes, and understand that the level of education too is a crucial factor, with 94% of adults who have post-secondary or high school education having bank accounts, while just 25% of adults with no education at all are banked. So level of education too, crucial factor addressing financial inclusion, because in addressing opportunities, opportunities, we have to look at everything in context holistically. Okay, so that we don't have any surprises or any unforeseen nuances to our projections. And where people are domiciled too has been seen as a crucial factor, a very, very relevant factor that people in rural areas usually are disadvantaged when it comes to financial services. Okay, you have 2/3 of rural dwellers remain unbanked, and even though 20% of the unbanked rural population entered the formal financial system between 2019 and 2022. Okay, you still have 2/3 of rural dwellers unbanked in Ethiopia. So you're talking about opportunities for financial inclusion, opportunities created as a result of the government's drive towards achieving financial inclusion, towards achieving 70% financial inclusion by 2025. Opportunities created, okay, as a result of that policy direction. And talking about policy direction and of course business strategies too, that's important to actually make sure that financial inclusion or enhanced financial inclusion is achieved, is optimized, and you will be able to talk about the channels. I mean, the creation of multiplicity of channels such that time and cost and distance and products quality or service are not really a deciding factor, or rather a discriminatory factor. And the use of the agent banking cannot be overemphasized. And we have an increase from 300,000 adults in 2016 to 700,000 adults in 2020, talking about a service by agent banking. All right, and of course, when you talk about the expansion of financial service or access points too, okay, very, very important to look at business strategies that actually address or actually bring this into reckoning. And we'll also be able to talk about the targeting the human capital element too, okay? So, talking about financial literacy, level of financial literacy, catching them young as it were. Schools tinkering with the existing curricula, and ensuring that, knowledge about savings, investments, portfolio management, those skills are available, at secondary school, high school level too. So talking about community engagement and enlightenment programs too. All right, trainings, symposium, and seminars. All those are we, targeting the human capital element too. I'm talking about policy direction and business strategies. Okay, by organizations and trying to optimize opportunities. All right, and in terms of using business strategies or sharing up policies that bring into reckoning the importance of improving and widening digital technology, for the rural economy and to achieve financial inclusion too, because we understand even the impact of mobile technology, that in most people that have mobile phones today have easy access to opening bank accounts, and that is financial inclusion as it were. Okay, so the essence of seamless savings, access to credit services, talking about non-collateralized facilities, things that are well tailored to consumer needs. Okay, and so policies and business strategies should actually target access to and use of mobile phones too. Okay, by poor rural women. Okay, and of course barriers to ownership should be removed as much as possible. So talking about digital technology in actually achieving financial inclusion, so we still will be looking at mobile banking, and we also be looking at point of sales terminal, okay, POS terminal, and also automated teller machine, and of course internet banking. We're looking at those technologies, the impact of those technologies on financial inclusion, and the opportunities that they present for partakers, for prospective partakers in the Ethiopian banking sector and the Ethiopian economy. But before we break the impacts of these technologies down, I want us to just look at some theories of financial inclusion, so that we're able to understand the thinking by governments, the thinking by stakeholders behind financial inclusion. First, we look at the public good theory. Okay, and talking about public good theory, we see financial services, have to be available to every citizen as a public good, okay, to benefit the citizens at large, rather than a specific group. Okay, that the financial services should not be exclusive, but rather should be a public good, just like roads are available publicly, and most roads are not exclusive. Okay, just like maybe the highway, except maybe if there's a toll, and once I was to pay the toll, it addresses access and use by ensuring that the products are tailor-made, so that use can be encouraged, so that our use is incentivized. Okay, so we also have vulnerable group theory, which that financial inclusion programs should target vulnerable people who are grossly disadvantaged economically, talking about poor, elderly, young, women, rural people, and so on, the vulnerable group, trying to bring them into the formal financial services system. Right? That's the thinking behind the vulnerable group theory. And you have the system theory of financial inclusion, which talks about financial inclusion as not actually affecting the system aggregately, but rather helping the subsystems. Okay, talking about the economic system, the social system, financial system, helping them, targeting them separately, rather than the aggregator system. Okay, helping the subsystems, and that's for the thinking behind the systems theory of financial inclusion. Also, we talk about the special agent theory, which emphasizes that financial inclusion services should be delivered by special agents, because at times the these activities involve delivering in remote areas, areas that have challenging geography, and so that the services of specialized agents will be required to deliver financial services. So that's the thinking behind the special agent theory. And you have the public service theory, which is similar to the public good theory, okay, and which emphasizes that financial inclusion is a responsibility of the government, a responsibility that the government owes its citizens, and the citizens expect that financial services will be delivered to them, okay, that formal financial services will be delivered to them. That's it's an expectation, okay, that that's a thinking behind the public service theory, that financial inclusion is a responsibility of the government. The responsibility that the government owes its citizens, and the citizens expect formal financial services to be delivered to them. And before we go on to break down what we have as regards the effect of financial and technology, achieving enhanced inclusion, it's important that we talk about something that is happening, okay, that can have an impact, on the Ethiopian economy, on Africa, and and to other contexts too. So because as we continue to navigate that course of delivery, we must mention the concerns about China. The CCP is generally abysmal on transparency. We understand that. So we have a situation where symbolisms are more relied upon, and the rumor mills too, they play a huge role. Okay, so the economic issues cannot be denied. Actually, the numbers are falling, and growth is slowing, and the most critical parts of the economy, the housing sector, has actually been taking a continuous hit. And you have Chinese people who have invested their pension funds into housing stock, having lost a lot of investments because of falling stock prices, and as a result of companies defaulting on housing projects, and also defaulting on loans from banks, and causing ripples in the banking sector too, and this is because the Chinese housing industry is highly leveraged. So the numbers tell a declining tale, and there are stories of a political shake-up within the CCP. Okay, with the current Chinese president Xi Jinping said to have lost control of the party and the military, and will soon be on his way out. Right. So two confirmed incidents may have contributed to his unraveling. The forced removal of Yu Jintao, if you recall, that's the former Chinese president from his seat during the 20th Congress of CCP, right? And of course the death of Mr. Li, who is Mr. Xi's main rival, okay? And people point to the fact that even Chairman Mao Zedong, they never facilitated the death of any of his political opponents, but at most verbally attacked them and maybe incited the people against them. And it is even said that he tried, as Xi Jinping now tried to orchestrate and successful comeback in the military, which had fatal consequences and on his loyalists, and his exit is now on course. Okay, and I learned that his preference is for Wang Yang to succeed him. For Wang Yang, that will be remarkably a true grass to grace story. Okay, so it's important that we understand all this in the context of the Ethiopian economy, because when China sneezes, for Africa catches cold, for Ethiopia, it might even be pneumonia. China and Ethiopia have a relatively strong economic relationship based on strategic cooperation and manifesting in expanding and rapidly rising trade and investments. So, and you have key infrastructure projects being financed by China in Ethiopia: railways, superhighways, power stations, veterinary clinics, water supply systems, and as of 2024, bilateral trade was a record $4.90 billion, and that was a 17.5% year-on-year rise. Okay, and even the Chinese custom data show that Ethiopia imported goods worth $4.34 billion from China in 2024, and that's actually 21.4% rise year on year. And exports to China from Ethiopia was $564 million, 6% decrease year on year. So the $3.77 billion trade deficit shows that Ethiopia depends a lot on China for goods necessary for the running of Ethiopia. Okay, so we try to look at what a slowdown in China might result in. Talking about the inability to meet production quotas, delivery deadlines, defaults, and breaches of agreements, and the attendant effects on the supply chain system of Ethiopia. We're talking of high-tech goods, pharmaceutical and chemical goods, textiles, machinery, nuclear reactors, electrical machinery, vehicles, articles of iron and steel, and so on. And so a slowdown in the Chinese economy will definitely impact supply lines for Ethiopia. Right? So there has to be proaction on the path of Ethiopia to look for alternatives, and of course, review cost projections because of variation in logistics and efficiency, and so all those have to be put in consideration so as to be able to mitigate those shocks, and so that the economy can just be able to thread the needle. Yes, and on the flip side, China buys coffee, cotton, leather, sesame seed, medicinal plants, edible vegetables, roots, and tubers, and so on from Ethiopia. China is even the biggest importer of sesame seeds from Ethiopia. So a slowdown in China will impact, its level of activity, its purchasing power, its ambition, and result in declining demand for Ethiopian commodities from China. So Ethiopia has to primarily proactively engage necessary stakeholders to facilitate the capacity to create alternative demand to substitute for this expected decline in Chinese patronage. All right, so the banking system serves as a critical role to play in ensuring that that the necessary finances galvanize on China to facilitate these processes of mitigating against the risk of the Chinese slump. And organizations like Amogate will equally work with the public and private corporations in Ethiopia to weather the coming storm efficiently. There is no kicking the can down the road for Ethiopia and for Africa, because for China, the dam is already breaking economically, and the political upheavals have done little to stop the bleeding. So implications for further investments in Ethiopia and Africa necessary to stem the tide of illegal immigration, suicidal immigration, the irrational crossing of the Mediterranean. Even the impact on Europe. In fact, I believe that Europe should even bail China out, because I've previously argued that Europe should pursue a different foreign policy path from that of the United States when it comes to China. China is a geopolitical rival of the United States. All right, so economically, but potentially increasingly militarily. With Chinese investments in Africa help reduce the level of illegal immigration in Europe. The jobs created help keep some Ethiopians and Africans back home instead of immigrating forcefully to Europe. However, China's long-term commitment to Ethiopia's industrialization and economic development is not in doubt. This is well evidenced in the investment in infrastructure. The level of technology transfer and the diversification of the investments. All right, so let's just run through some strategic ones like Sansheng Pharmaceuticals and Human Well Healthcare, which actually are creating waves in the life sciences sector in Ethiopia. You also have Sheng Glass Factory, which was developed by the China Geoengineering Corporation. You also have PolyGCL, petroleum natural gas projects, okay, and that's an energy initiative. And you also have the Ethiopian wool textile and dyeing projects by Jiangsu Sunshine Investments, okay, and you also have Duress Ceramic PLC backed by Rongwei Industrial Investments. And you also have Kindred Ethiopian Flax Company Limited by Zhangjiang Yuan Linen Investment. You also have Dongfang Industrial Park, okay, investment by Jiangsu Yongjuan Investment Company Limited. You also have Wuxi #1 Cotton Textile Factories Ethiopian production base, okay, that's in Ethiopia there. So you also have Yongyam International Light Industrial City, which is like a manufacturing hub, like a large-scale manufacturing cluster. And you also have Transion Holdings mobile assembly plants, which are actually supporting Ethiopia's tech sector. So look at the level of investment and the diversification of the portfolios when it comes to the Chinese investment. So, like I said, China's long-term commitment to Ethiopia's industrialization and economic development is not in doubt. Okay, nevertheless, Ethiopia must be prepared for the slowing down of investments from China as China grapples with slow growth amidst a housing sector crisis, and the ongoing banking sector reform too, and by extension the homegrown economic reform agenda of the Ethiopian government must be geared towards protecting the Ethiopian economy and the Ethiopian people from these shocks, right? Talking about the impacts on the supply chain, and of course impacts on as a result of the reduction, the Chinese demand, yes, the Chinese demand, how it will be substituted to ensure that the revenue expected to finance the budget from those trade deals, those expected trade, we actually be attained. Okay, also declining investments too. Okay, the declining investments, loans and grants from China. How to actually cope and still achieve the level of growth necessary to grow the Ethiopian economy. All right. So, talking about opportunities for finance and investment by banks and institutions and individuals. Okay, so business strategies should actually be addressed, should be geared towards addressing these gaps that the slow growth in China will cause in the Ethiopian economy. With over 4,500 Chinese run projects in Ethiopia, and employing hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians, China actually accounts for almost 50% of foreign direct investment in Ethiopia. So it's important that we understand how our projections about the opportunities in the Ethiopian banking sector are nuanced by China's economic health. When China sneezes, okay, Africa catches cold, but for Ethiopia, it might be pneumonia. And on this note, we've come to the end of today's episode. But please do remember that at Amogate, we are always ready to support your organizations to work optimally, creating frameworks and processes for optimization of resources and attainment of goals. You can contact us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram at Amogate. You can also visit our website at www.amogate.org. Our email is contact@amogate.org. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page at Amogate. I hope that the time we've spent together has been rewarding, because from my own end, it's been my pleasure. Until I come up on your devices again, it's bye for now, and God bless you. Thank you.